we live in cities and we spend a very long time in our cities. We sleep, we work, we play, and I put the word play as entertainment. I use verbs here. And basically we have our social lives. And if we think about it, most of the time we are confined not only in the city, but in a small segment of the city. I'm going to go back to Doxiadis, 30,000 people. I'm going to go back to Italian planners who used to say that if there are 30,000 people, you more or less know each other. And if you go to a city of that size, literally you almost know everybody. So here when we're talking about the city, we're talking about not only the physical construct, but at the same time, the people who live in that city. So rarely we leave this area, and we leave it when we have vacation, when we go to visit someone else somewhere else. So as a result, we're interacting continuously with that part of the city. Now, when we see the city as a classroom, we have to think what kind of a classroom. And there are multiple ways. You can see the city as a classroom for social interactions. You can see the city as a classroom for history. For example, I have spent quite a long time of my life in Athens. Athens is, just by looking at the ruins and looking at the Parthenon, history is part of it every day. But it's not only the Parthenon, it's everywhere you go in the city, you see all remnants from other periods. I have lived a long time in Boston. In Boston, again, you see the history of Boston as being the place that people had ships and going all over the world. And you can see that very clearly. So you can see the historic part of the city. You can see the technical part of the city, how it has been built. Boston, for example, has been built on the river. So the houses are built on piles. The materials they are using are brick. They very much England. That's why it's called the New England area, the United States. You go to other places, you see different technology. So the city informs you as technology. The city informs you in many other ways. I use just these two examples. My focus is going to be on the city as learning from the city for the sustainability point of view. And let's put in context what we mean by sustainability. Simply, in the context we're going to put is that how we can continue living a comfortable life for a long time, which simply means that we have to respect the resources that they're necessary for us to live a comfortable life for a long time. And when I say for us, I don't mean just us. I mean our children. I mean actually the future generations as well. So how are we going to do that? And if you're in a city, and if you start looking at the city as what is happening around you in terms of the sustainability, the way I just defined it to you, then you start realizing that you spend too many resources. So I'm going to ask some basic questions. You turn on the lights, electricity comes in. Where that electricity comes from? You turn on the tap water. In many parts of the world, you have really clean water you can drink. In most parts of the world, you cannot drink that water if you have it. In a large part of our planet, you don't have running water. So for those of us that we are more lucky to live in the cities that you can turn on the faucet and drink the water, we have to think about it, where that water comes from. Where does it go when it goes down the sink? The next thing is about not only energy and water, but also pollution. What happens when you drive your car or you take the bus? What happens with all the exhaust? So if you start thinking about all these things, then the city becomes a great place to learn. And only if you learn, you can start being more responsible to the planet. Because what happens is our cities have a very large ecological footprint, as we said earlier. So all that makes you start thinking what it's actually that you need, what you can be more conscious, and goes the education part, which is fundamental in preserving resources. And also is fundamental to start thinking, does it make sense for me to pay a little more money and have renewable energy delivered to me as opposed to have fossil fuel? And then the question of leadership comes in, because if you live in a city and the leaders of the city do not think like this, then you cannot do much. But what you can do is you can elect the leaders who think along these lines. So I see the city as a laboratory, as a living laboratory for understanding our relationship with nature, our relationship with the planet. For example, when I plan new cities, and what I have planned so far, often are in areas that they are green fields. Green fields means they're not contaminated, they're agricultural land. It's necessary because of the increase of population. So if someone says, don't do that, the answer is, there's no way not to do that. If we see the increase in population, for example, in some countries, is millions of people every year. And this million of people need to live somewhere. So you have to start thinking, how are you going to plan the city? How can you have the density, which is very important here, to accommodate more people in less space, in less land, so the land can be used for other purposes, for the production of food and for nature. But more important, what we do is we always start by doing a mapping of the fauna and flora in that area. We take a record of plants, of birds, small animals, and we make sure that we allow them to coexist with people. So we don't go there and throw them out, but rather the question is, how can we make green corridors? How we can make them live with us? And I have to say here that sometimes this has happened by chance. In the United States, in my house in Boston, I see deer, I see goose, I see rabbits all the time. I see fox all the time. So they coexist with us, and the reason they coexist is because there is a lot of land around the houses. However, that is not sustainable the way it is there, because we have too much land for too few people who live in the house. But you can adjust those things as we plan cities. And if we plan cities like this and we educate people, because only educated people can have a sustainable life, then this gives us a great opportunity. And it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to learn from the city. And when I say learn, I don't mean only the young children, but everybody has to realize and has to be sensitive about these issues. Everybody, when they turn on the faucet in their bathroom or the kitchen, they need to know, or even worse, their garden, what kind of garden you need to have, how you can spend less water, how you can collect the water during, let's say, in Europe during the winter, to use it in the summer. So all these things are going to drive us to think about the city as a classroom for again, many different aspects. I would like to focus primarily on sustainability.